So the idea is future of Android. By the way, if you haven't seen, check also the New York version. I think it was the first time I agreed with Jake Wharton on something. So it was good stuff. Let's see what comes up here. So how do you see where Android is going? What are your thoughts? I think we have an order on the slide, and then we'll take it from there. And start with a little introduction. We start with Manu. Who are you, and what's the future like?
Okay, you can hear me, right? I can get started. I'm Manuel Vivo. I'm a staff Android engineer at Bumble. And well, it's difficult to start, right? Like I have a killing seat here. I think definitely we cannot talk, it's Android, it's 2025. We have to talk about AI in some way. I think the future is going to be a little bit influenced by that. I think AI-assisted development will be more of a thing in the upcoming future. Maybe in the upcoming like 2 or 3 years. Like right now, like we have autocomplete in the IDE, and we use it quite extensively. I think AI is going to take some part of it, and so we will shift the focus towards not what we write, the actual code, and it's going to be more about how pieces connect to each other. And I think to prepare for that, we really need to think about the architecture patterns that we are using today and the different trade-offs between them, right? Because AI is probably going to write a lot of the code, but it's more about how or why we are using that particular piece of practice. I think in similar terms, the AI is also democratizing the ability to code, so more people will be able to code and create mobile applications. So in that way, I think as mobile developers, I think we need to focus a little bit more on, let's say, like the mobile constraints that we could face potentially. So thinking more about the battery, the performance of the application, and trying to think about more how we can get our existing knowledge and how we can deep dive a little bit more and try to get the most of it. And similarly, again, that code potentially might be written by AI, so I think we should also spend a little bit more of time to make it a little bit like, make it more difficult to write bad code in a way, so like investing a lot in observability, in traceability when the application is in production, but also like having like a solid testing strategy in place so that, we verify that whatever code we ship is actually of high quality, and have some sort of like quality gateways as well, like creating performance tests, making sure that memory is within the limits and things like that. Probably my colleagues will be talking about Compose multi-platform, Kotlin multi-platform as well. Probably just to give a few hints there is we need to think as well, like with the rise of let's say this modular architecture, like more code will be reused and shared between different products and platforms. So I would really like focus on practicing or learning about defining like clean boundaries between features, between modules, how to communicate between those modules, and then probably how to handle like the shared dependencies between them. So it's more about like forgetting a little bit about what code we are writing. I'm taking a step back, thinking more like as an architect, thinking more about the consequences of that code in production. So that's my take on it.
Cool, thank you. I think we let everyone go before I ask like all the tough questions. So, but let's continue. Alejandra.
Hi. These lights are very strong, so I cannot see anyone, but yeah, we'll try to make this work. Yeah, the future of Android. I'm also going to chat about AI. I think, well, first I want to say I'm very happy to be back in Berlin here. And I'm happy this conference, Droidcon Berlin, is happening a little bit, like usually it takes place around summer. And this time around, it's happened now after the summer in September. And it's good, because had you asked me this question a couple of months ago, I would have given like a very different answer. And that is testament as to how quickly the ecosystem is shifting and how my thoughts about this have shifted as well. I'm happy to be more optimistic about the whole thing as the AI hype settles, and we're becoming more in grips as to what the technology can do and what it can't do, where it falls short, right? Because clarity is good. Setting, like, aligning the expectations of what you want from the tool is good as well. So you are not so frustrated when you get it wrong over and over and over again. So yeah, I probably started using heavily AI like a year ago for, getting it to answer all my emails, like the most of us. And now I'm using it heavily for everything that I do at work, right? Like it's deeply integrated with everything that we do and with our processes. And I've gotten better at understanding that, right? Where I'm gonna need to just let it do its thing and wow, like be delighted, and when I'm gonna have to hand-hold it through the thing that I want to do, and where it's gonna fall completely flat, and I'm gonna have to resort to old school, search my answer in Stack Overflow and documentations, because we still need all of that, especially when there is something very novel, very new. So yeah, that's been fun. It's a good exercise. As a senior developer in the room, your superpower today is being able to analyze the output of these tools. Like the quality of the output will be as valuable as the input. So give it a lot of context and get better at prompt engineering. I know we don't like there are certain words that we don't like, but prompt engineering, it's a thing. Get better at that. Keep refining your ideas and learn together with the tool, and verify the output 100%. I think that's what makes us relevant today. Being able to guide the tool towards what you need it to do. As a junior engineer in the room, I feel you. Can be scary to see the industry right now, where it's heading. But, hang in there. Think about AI as a very exciting and, very interesting teacher where you can learn a lot from, like asking questions. Why is it doing that? And if you don't understand it, or you cannot, contest the answer, read the documentation and stuff. And don't let it do all the coding for you, because much like when you're doing a course on any other technology, the teacher will tell you, do the exercise, because if not, you think you're getting the idea, but you're not really getting the idea. So do the code. You're going to have to do the coding yourself and put the hours, but don't despair. It's going to be fine. And if you're a software engineer, period, keep on learning, because that's important for all of us. Everything that I just said could have been applied to anything, either if it was Android, React, any technology. So a little bit more specific on Android, I am going to talk about Compose multi-platform. This year is the first year that I'm very excited about these technologies, but of course they've been around for the longest time, right? There is another conference on Fair happening at this very same time, and React Native and stuff. We all know their names. But I'm very excited about Compose multi-platform this year, and not only because it was the first year that I saw what it can do in production. Suddenly, I'm able to develop and ship code for the other platform. It's been fun, and granted, maybe the performance and the experience is not on par with native. Probably won't ever be, because it's not native. But maybe it can be good enough. In 2025, with how things are, changing rapidly, if you're not one of these companies that are very well established, and even if you are, in an industry that prioritizes you shipping fast and adding value to the user, probably good enough is fine, and you have to consider those trade-offs. And to sum up, and the third point is so novel and so great that Greg mentioned it with his own video, which is becoming a technologist again, right? Becoming, especially with AI and multi-platform, I am able to learn and ship for iOS. They are learning Compose too, and we're all a big happy family. Come back to what brought you into software engineering in the first place, right? Solving hard problems, delivering value to customers or users, and yeah, becoming a player of all the field, if you will, and really solving those problems. Yeah, I think that's it.
Who are you?
Huh?
Who are you?
And yeah, my name is on this. Alejandra Stammato. You could have said that at the beginning.
Well, yeah, great seeing someone so very excited about all the new AI tools here. Maybe in the next project we'll not forget that internet permission to add in the first place. So then we already won, I think. So let's see what the next person things. And the wallet goes to... Go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, it's working. Do you mind if I stand? I don't like speaking. I'm used to like moving around. It's very, I don't know about you guys, but I like to move. I could see you moving your hand around like... All right, hi, I'm PY. I used to live in San Francisco. I've been working at Square, which is now named Blocked, for 12 years. And I just moved back to France, and so it's my first time here, because it's a lot easier to get to Berlin when you're in France than when you're in San Francisco. So I'm really excited to be here, to meet like the original droidcon community. And Greg, that was a tough question you asked. Like, you asked me if I wanted to talk about the future of Android, and I don't really think about the future a whole lot. So I was like, well, okay, but what could I talk about? So I think there's like three main things for me. Number one is like the future that you hear about in, in the big tech companies in the Silicon Valley. Like if you think about what do they want for us, the phones are just becoming a channel for LLMs. And essentially, I think you're seeing the idea that you're going to be interacting more and more with those things. And to the point where maybe the screen disappears, and maybe it's just us chatting all day with our little device and having some back and forth conversations, right? And if that happens, no more activities. Wow. But then you start thinking about that. Okay, that happens. But how do you interact with those? Well, maybe the apps are exposing intent-based APIs, and there's this thing called the MCP, the Model Context Protocol, I think, that allows LLMs to interact with apps. And so maybe that is how you're going to be writing your apps in the future. You're just writing, exposing a bunch of intent-based API that allow the LLMs to interact in structured ways with the application. But maybe we're wearing those glasses, like Ray-Ban, the new Meta Ray-Ban things. And maybe what they're doing is displaying some pieces of UI, and you're going to need your app that is running on your phone to send a UI to those devices. And how is that going to work? Well, there is an answer today. It's called Remote Compose. What's different about Remote Compose is that instead of, because it's going from one device to the other, right? Instead of sending bitmaps, it's sending instructions for how to draw things. You're writing your little compose, it runs on a phone, but then it's sending instructions with like dynamic instructions, animations, how things are moving. So that's super interesting for this type of future. So that's future number one, the future of big tech. Is that going to work? I don't know. What's interesting for me is, like I said, I'm not really into the future. In fact, I was telling you yesterday, I don't like learning new stuff. Like, I really don't. I like the stuff I know, and they're like, oh, you should use RxJava. Oh, no, I don't want to do that. Oh, coroutines. Oh, compose. And I'm always lagging behind. The thing about me, though, is I let everybody else try the new stuff, and then that creates a lot of bugs. And I love bugs. I love investigating bugs. So I dive in, and I go, okay, how does this actually work? And that's where I learn. So when it comes to AI, I think it's amazing, because it's going to create a lot of new code, a lot of bugs. And so I'm going to have a job for a while, you guys. And there's maybe one final thing. If you want to talk about the future Android, you should look at the past, right? And one, I think, very important thing about Android is, of course, Google, acquired that company, created it, pushed it, invested a lot. But what's special about Android is the community. Is you all brought a lot to make Android what it is today, and so what we're also seeing, and I know some people here work at Google. This is my opinion, not probably not shared by other people, but I think leadership at Google is kind of losing it. They don't know really. They moved from being visionary leaders to being managers, and they have this thing, and they're like, okay, we got to push AI. What about Android? There's less and less, in my opinion, less and less innovation coming from the leadership of Google, and that's okay. But remember, it's open source, and remember, we shaped what Android became, and so I think the future of Android, it's you.
That was a nice sentence. Well said. So let's see who's next. And we have Erik.
Oh, hey. Yeah, okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Erik. I work as a freelance software engineer. I've been doing Android for a while, started in 2008. So I've seen a lot of changes. I've seen gone through all of the things. And yeah, were we skipping the slides or no?
He's the first one who has actually a slide.
Yeah, I have my own slide. Now you're going to think I'm going to start ranting about how things were better before. No, I'm actually going to do the opposite. Do not be this guy. I have occasionally been this guy and learned that this is not really good practice. It doesn't move you forward in your career. But I still see it happening, and it doesn't really have to be an old guy. There's like, whenever there is a change happening, people tend to like, nope, wait, careful. There's this saying like, anything new that happens after you turn 35 is scary and probably wrong. And so keep that in mind with everything that's happening right now. And everybody's talking about AI, how that will change things. My kind of like short take on that one is, first of all, how many here are using AI to help write their code? Raise your hands. Okay, there's a bunch of you. Some of you are not doing it. So those of you who do it, have you noticed that the parts it's really good at are UI? Like, anyone tried Lovable, for instance? It's amazing. It's like it gets that right. So it's much better at doing like front-end UI stuff than it is at doing like system engineering things. Mostly because the thing it has to do with the system engineering thing is unknown to it. But UI is so common, and especially when you come to like common ways of writing code. And that's where I think it's gonna be the biggest shift in how we write apps. Anyone here who's used Figma's like AI tool knows this as well. It's amazingly good at doing UI. Maybe it doesn't spit out Compose today, but I don't think that's far away from happening either. With that said, don't forget to learn about how UI works, because you have to fix the code, as Pierre just mentioned there. But this is just the beginning. So like seeing like you're gonna still write code, you're still gonna write a lot of the underneath stuff that happens that I think is more interesting. But it's not, a lot of the UI parts are gonna be done by others or automatically by AI. But that's just a start. The next step is, have you thought about how amazing a user interface for the chat agents really is? Like, you just put in your text and you get the reply out, and when you apply this in a multimodal way, so you get both images and everything else, it's amazingly good user interface. So why don't we let the AI build the actual UI user interface we see on the screen? It's kind of, I don't agree with Pierre here on the thing that the screen will disappear, because we like to look at stuff. So we're still going to have like phones with screens. But maybe the other parts were right. The apps are just like MCP servers that performs tasks for a UI agent running on your phone. So the only thing we're interacting with is a UI agent. And that will in real time build new UI. We're not there yet, but I'm seeing that happening in other areas for front end. So basically, like, your dashboards being built where the whole UI components and everything is built on demand. So yeah, get very good at system engineering and system design, because you need a robust, secure apps to support this. You've probably all seen like news about how insecure some of these MCP servers can be and how much stuff they can leak. So yeah, so my hot take is like, don't forget to embrace all the change, but also notice and try all the new things, and be prepared for that. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you. I was lately at a music and tech conference, and there's someone asked like how musicians are using AI, and it's also the same. Oh, are you afraid of like taking jobs? No, I use it for the boring stuff. If you don't enjoy mastering, I use it for mastering. So if you don't enjoy UI, let it build the UI. I really like that. Cool. Let's see who's next. Nicole.
There we go. Nice. You can hear me. Hi, everyone. I won't forget to introduce myself. My name is Nicole Terc. I'm an Android developer at HubSpot, and I've been doing Android also for a while. So it is tough to be one of the last ones. As everybody else has been saying here, I believe AI is here to stay, and it's not true only for Android, but with several of other systems as well. I think that the people that is not using AI today, my first recommendation is to give it a shot, like give it a try, and just see why all the hype and all the things are there. What I believe the future with AI is going to be, and just to not like repeat everything, is that I feel like in a close future, in the next years, we're going to feel less awkward using it, and we're going to find where exactly these AI tools, because they are tools at the end, are going to fit in our workflow. So if you haven't used it yet, please do. But leaving AI to the side, I feel like in Android, and I think this is general, as I said, I think in the future, we're not only going to be thinking what platform, and this is probably a weird take and a bit with what Ali was saying. I think that we are shifting towards, and facilitated with AI, lowering the bar of learning new things, of a developer shipping for different platforms, like creating multi-platform things or even native things with the help of AI. And we're going to be seeing more applications that are available in different places, like in iOS, Android, your watch, your car, whatever. Because these days you usually don't have the time, because we're always pressed on time to do any of this. But there are a lot of projects out there that the only reason they exist today is because AI did it for you. And I think that's going to be something that we're going to start seeing more often, that we're going to see different projects, different apps, different weird ideas out there. And we're going to also be seeing this in projects that are going to be enabling your own application to be available in different and a wide array of different platforms. So my suggestion for you, for like thinking on the future, is to be more flexible. Try to learn a little bit more about the new platforms that are coming in. Try to understand a little bit more how this works, like this iOS world, this Android Watch world, this auto world. We also have a track, I think, for auto. And just be curious. Like, don't, as Erik was saying, don't be the old man just screaming at the clouds, saying, like, thinking about the good old world where you only thought about Android. Also try to think about the other things. And I'm not saying that tomorrow you're going to become an expert, but you have AI, right? You can just use it to get a little bit ahead. But leaving that part to the side, I also think that in the future, we're going to start seeing developers doing more than one role. And I already see that in my job, that I am not only responsible for coding my Android app anymore. I am also in charge of like understanding, since coding is done partly for me, I am also in charge of understanding how this product works and what it actually is solving for the user. Because I think that's the part where humans still shine. Understanding actually how the other humans interact, how other humans like to interact with your product, and how this product actually gives value. Because if you're only creating AI slop, AI is not going to be doing anything for you. You need to actually ask for the things you want. Because if not, AI is not going to do it. So I think that's my take in summary. Like, we're going to be seeing developers doing more roles, developers shipping to more platforms, and also developers bringing more value and bringing like the spark for the apps to shine. But yeah, that's me.
Thank you. Interestingly, his question was the future of Android, and every single person talks most of the time about AI. We didn't plan it, but it's just like the world it is, right? It's very interesting.
Yeah, he's here, baby.
Cool, I think we have one left. Sebastian?
Cool, great. Is it fine if I walk over to the lectern?
Yeah. He's probably German, he bought a full slide deck, so.
Yeah, exactly. So, hi, I'm Sebastian. I do Kotlin at JetBrains, and I have a tendency to over-prepare. So when someone told me that I could bring slides, I brought slides. It's crazy, I know. Yeah. My prediction for the future is that we're going to have a new UX paradigm, and it's kind of one that you already see, but I think we're not quite there yet. Currently, we're in the stage where everything's a text box. If you use Juni, like an AI agent, that's a text box for text. If you're using like Gemini or Google Assistant, that's a text box, but just for voice. It's kind of the same thing. I don't think we're going to get rid of this one anymore. But I think it's not going to replace anything that we have so far. I think it's just going to develop further into a bigger UX paradigm overall. So really right now, the default text box and then getting spit text back into your face is kind of like the version of it in its infancy. We've already heard the word model context protocol a little earlier. And I think the execution of it is somewhat terrible if the consumer is like a human being. So, it doesn't really allow you to provide like that much rich information. It probably goes in the right direction, but the part that I think is maybe the most interesting about this is that for me, the entire conclusion is that at the end of the day, rather than having a bunch of applications that all have chat windows in them, you're gonna have some sort of vertical integration, right? At the end of the day, there's gonna be one chat box on your device, and that will have to control everything. So, because you don't want to have like 7 slightly different like experiences there. But for that, I think what we have so far is like terribly underserving this like UX paradigm. So my prediction is that we'll see a lot more enhancements on how your own applications will be able to influence what is shown as part of a conversational user interface. We kind of see like sparks of this already. If you're ever bored, ask ChatGPT to like ask you a question using QuizGPT, and it's gonna pop in like a essentially interactive user interface as part of the conversation that you can click through and so on. So there's like an actual richer component. And I think this is kind of what we're gonna see much, much more. You already see this in some of the more vertically integrated applications like Telegram or Line that have their like mini app store, where as part of a regular chat conversation, you might get a button that says order food, and then it pops out like a proper like user interface that you can interact with. And my prediction here is that we'll see something that allows you to, first of all, interact with this just using your fingers, but also that this will probably be a subset of all the general UI components, so that an agentic system can still understand what's going on the screen, so that users of the device will be able to pick, do I want to just touch things, scroll things, like look at lists, or do I just want to keep conversing and have like an agent do the actual UI navigation? So you want to have this part where the user has the agency, has the visual elements as well. I don't think this is going to replace anything, though, because I think that the standalone UX of an application is one of the key points. There's like a dozen of reasons. I'm not going to go into all of them, but the number one is it's terrible to try and figure out what an app can do if all you have is a chat interface. Like, you're just going to have to like just ask a lot, which is really, really annoying. I also have one more part that kind of goes beyond this in regards to how you would actually build your applications for this. On the one hand, I think it's a good time to figure out like where does your application that you build fit into this as a puzzle piece. It probably is really worth revisiting the structure of your application, perhaps, to see that you have properly separated your concerns so that it's possible for you to support such a potential use case. But my other part that I think is still really, really important, and this is just a very basic prediction, is that the apps that focus on UD, on user delight, are eventually still going to be the ones that will rise to the top and that will win out in the end. And I want to be very, very clear. I personally think that user delight is simply a function of taste and care. And those are things that you have because you are quintessentially human. So no matter what the AI tools are going to do, even if they reduce the time for you to produce a tangible artifact, it's you that is kind of the gate to getting something that's really, really good. Also, since I have the stage here, please someone build a robot that does my dishes instead of all the other stuff. And since I was on an airplane recently, can you please make sure that your apps work offline? I can't even read my business conversations while I don't have Wi-Fi. Thank you. Woo!
Okay. So thanks. I would like to say something that Sebastian said, because it was the first one not only focusing on how development changes of Android, let's say how Android will change. So maybe any predictions like how an Android app will change, UX-wise, like the way it is built, or Android itself. Anyone want to take that?
Well,
Erik, you've seen a lot.
have you noticed how the screens have stopped growing? They tried with the foldable, but basically the foldable isn't happening. You know, there were like twice the number of tablets sold compared to the number of foldables last year, and I think it's less than 1% of the total sales of smartphones is foldable. So I don't think it's gonna happen. They tried now. It's like the 7th version of the foldable from Samsung coming, and I mean, it costs as much as a small laptop. So anyway, that's my prediction first. We're still going to have this. But the fact that the screens are now remaining the same size is like for a long time, the screens kept growing and growing and growing. But now we're kind of in a stable place where they stayed there. But I think that, like, both of you were talking about, like, how we interact with these devices is going to change. Maybe there will be like a complete AI, what I mentioned before, the AI was basically build the UI on demand for you based on your context and everything. Or maybe we will stop using the screen as much, as you mentioned. I don't know, but both of these have like an immense impact on how you will build your app. Like it's funny in Android, we still talk about which design pattern to do and how to do it right. Every conference there is like at least a couple of talks about that. But maybe those design patterns are now completely wrong because you don't really have a user interface anymore. So it is model view, whatever. Maybe that won't be deprecated. You will only have a service instead. So you will start to have to look at like back-end design patterns instead for your apps. That's one prediction.
Thank you. Anyone else want to add something?
I can chime in. I think that's something that we're actually already seeing. I think apps are going to move towards something more personalizable. Like, we're going to be leveraging several tools to make an application be your application. And there's a lot of apps already been trying this for years. So I think we're going to be seeing a rise a bit more on that. And as I mentioned in the intro, I also think we're going to be seeing our apps not being only for Android, but being for several devices. So you also need to think on those screens.
I've been also like recently in China last month, and I was a little bit surprised by WeChat. Like, you can do everything within WeChat, the discoverability of applications as well, and everything is done through that. And I think, as I was mentioning in the intro as well about like the modular design, it's just Erik was saying as well, like focus on the business logic, right? That's what's going to bring value to the customer, regardless of the form of, whether that's a mini app within another app or it's a standalone app. It's about like focusing on what you are bringing to the world more than how it is displayed on the screen. So I do agree. Yeah.
User delight. You said it, right? So maybe let's go back a bit to development. So with the world changing for us of developers, like, what's the skill set you think that we should have or acquire or strengthen to be prepared maybe for the new world? I think we heard a few things as more system engineering, and then you said you have more than one wall already. Anyone want to add something here?
Yeah, I think. Well, there's been a couple of points made on like don't yell at the cloud and stuff like this, but yeah, basically be curious about the new tools and new tech. Be excited, because probably we're becoming, more than ever. It was always important to be a product engineer, but now more than ever, you have to think and own the product and think, does this problem really require a new app? And maybe the answer is yes, in which case we're all in the perfect place to keep on learning and keep refining our knowledge. But if not, maybe it requires you shifting and building some other thing. Maybe it requires a traditional app or a chat with an LLM. And I don't like the future in which I see all of the apps converging to being a clone of ChatGPT, but apparently that's kind of how it's going now. But yeah, I think that's the thing. Be excited about learning new things. Be excited about what brought you to software development, and if it is something that you're already an expert in, then you're going to be quicker. And if not, an AI can help you.
All right, so I sort of have a take. I think one thing that we need to get, and that we're going to get better at, I hope, is critical thinking. Once you start getting, some experience with LLMs, you realize they can be like perfect, and then the next minute just say something completely wrong, right? And if it's a topic, and it happens to me, like, I love to use them on topics where I don't know much, like statistics. I'm trying to do some statistics. I know enough to know when it's wrong, and so I keep asking questions, and I keep figuring out, okay, so like the LLM would say something, and I'm like, give me the source for that. It's like, oh, I was wrong, sorry, and then like say something different, right? So I think critical thinking will be a skill that is very important, being able to realize when you're being lied to or when you need to push. So that's one. The other thing is, if you think about what LLMs, how they're built, right? At the core, it's really this idea of repeating to yourself what other people have said, right? At the core. And given that, and I was explaining that yesterday, to me it's the same as an industry standard. What is an industry standard? It's the lowest common denominator that the industry could agree on. So it's not a pretty high bar, it's actually the lowest bar. And your job, is to define the next industry standard, is to push things forward. So same with LLMs. They're great when there's an area where you don't know a lot. They can help bring you to that sort of minimum bar of understanding. But your job is to become the expert, the person who's going to be able to generate the content that the LLM will next take into its account and bring everybody else to your level. So I think that's where the skill set is going to be. It's like I'm going to be using LLMs to bring up my level, but then trying to push the boundary of what what can be done.
Good one.
Yeah, good. So I realize there's a concrete tip about what you should pick up, and what I see among many mobile developers is that they are very much just focused on the mobile development and have very little skill outside there. I don't know about the rest of you here, but I see that very often. So the one thing you should definitely know how to do is how to write the backend service and deploy it, like the whole chain from start to finish. Every developer should know how to do that. Pick a stack, just learn how that works, how to deploy that backend service. And the other thing is the whole, more down to the network and the hardware parts. You should know what is coming and what is happening there. Like, I have been focusing a lot on Bluetooth. You've probably seen me talk about Bluetooth before, but one of those things is learn about what's happening on that domain there. If you know what's happening in the next Bluetooth version, you will see a lot of new use cases that we cannot do today. There are technologies in the phone which is hugely underused. Anyone used ultra-wideband, for instance? Amazing technology, but very few people know about that. There's new types of sensors coming. We have already tried some of the sensors. I don't remember if a couple of years ago when Google had the little mini radar in the phone. That is probably going to come back in some form. But what that means is that if you understand all these new hardware technologies, sensors and networks, radio technologies and stuff, you can build new types of apps that we don't have today. So be prepared for that. So both embedded parts and backend parts.
So this may be a corollary to what was already said, but the obvious downside of working with a lot of the AI-assisted tools is that they're really convenient, which means that they allow you to get to a certain place without putting in the hard work of understanding what goes on. They're kind of trying to get you to be lulled in a little bit and just get to the result without maybe necessarily understanding all the parts. I think if you want to build things that work well and that you understand and that can grow to arbitrary sizes, then sometimes or oftentimes you just need to spend the time not skipping out on the old school stuff, of just learning what's going on. So next to being curious about what's new, I can very much recommend still being curious about what's old and just kind of really having a super solid foundation to build upon for everything that's new. Because when that part's shaky, building on top of it can be kind of tricky.
Yeah, something that Manu said earlier. Because you said you hope that we make it more difficult to write bad code with these new tools. What we're seeing so far is more actually it's a common denominator, as you said. It's actually trained on all the bad code out there. So there's a lot of duplication. This was the first studies showing. So how do we keep the level of code up in our apps? What do you think? Maybe I give it directly back to you.
Yeah, I can definitely try that. Something I wanted to mention, because one of the skills, sorry, going back to the previous question very quickly, one of the skills that I consider like really necessary is the growth mindset as well. Because here we've been talking a lot about technical skills, but that's not everything, right? Like we live in the world, and apart from technical skills, I think as engineers, we also need to invest and keep a healthy balance with soft skills, but also like business knowledge and business acumen, because again, it's easier to ship code, it's easier to invent something new, right? But you need that, again, like that vision to actually, if you want to make a change and you want to have an impact, really have a healthy balance and then improve as well in soft skills and the business knowledge. Because I think having to be a well-rounded engineer, you have not only, it's not required just technical skills. But yeah, going back to, the performance and trying to have like a production-ready application, like, there are many different things that we could be doing. I mentioned about observability and traceability, but yeah, we have PY here, like Leak Canary, for example, right? Like using these tools to make sure and verify that we have a high-quality application. It's going to be essential because of that, right? Like our application now could be potentially run in different, we don't know even what devices will be available in the future. So try to optimize for things like that is going to be really important. So get familiar with Leak Canary, Perfetto, write performance tests, inspect the traces and get information you need from them. That's probably information or knowledge that AI might struggle with at the beginning. Probably it will get there, but meanwhile, we can shine a little bit in this world of AI.
Thank you for mentioning Leak Canary. I'm not going to talk about that though. There's something really interesting. So you ask, what about all the bad code that's being generated? And so what do we mean by bad code? I think we can all agree, and one thing we can agree on is that it's code that is hard to change. Like our job is a job of change. What we're trying to do all the time is change the app, change the behavior, right? And when we run into bad code, it's hard to understand. It's hard to change. So what can we do there? We could try to teach the LLMs, and maybe we'll do that, how to make better code. But the biggest problem there is, how do we make sure that the LLM is building the app, like the features that we need in the way that is needed? How do we know that we don't have bugs? And the answer might be, you might think, well, you should review all the code. That's not going to scale very well. And I think we all know tests are the answer, right? And that usually, as a community, I think a number of people have talked about tests for years. You should write tests first. You should write all your tests. And we all know, like, not that many people write a whole lot of tests. Like, we know that. We don't have to go over that. But I think it's about to change. And so that's where there's this project called Trailblaze that we released at Square not too long ago, which is super interesting because the idea is you're writing your tests in natural language, and it's translating that to instructions using the LLMs. But then the instructions just run over and over and over every time you run a test, which means the LLM is only involved once and not every time you run a test, unless you change something in the UI, the test fails, and then the LLM tries rerunning again and getting a new output. What's super interesting about that is that the test becomes a lot easier, the UI tests anyway, they become a lot easier to maintain, right? You don't have to go, every time you change a view ID or some text, you don't have to go update your test. If the tests are easier to maintain, maybe we can write a whole lot more tests, and that makes it easier to then make changes to the app, and maybe we can teach the LLMs to write better code and feel safe about the big refactorings that the LLMs are going to be doing. So that's my hope.
Thank you. I had tests here, so thanks for bringing it up. Cool. As we are nearly out of time, I want to give the audience the chance also. So if you have a question, something about the future of Android, you want to ask our panelists, come to the microphone.